Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to our very special WrestleMania Backlash preview. Wait a minute. That's not what we're welcoming you to tonight. No. There is an event going on this weekend, WrestleMania Backlash, but we're not going to waste our time with it just because it's rehash. And besides that, the Big Don of Wrestling with Egos has been chopping at the bit to talk about something from wrestling history that has a unique set of circumstances going on with it. So we're going to give that point in time its just due. Thank you for joining us, however you are joining us, as you all often do, whether it's on YouTube or the many podcast platforms that you can find Wrestling with Egos on: Apple, Spotify, Google, Anchor, etc. We appreciate the interaction. We appreciate your support. We appreciate the fact that we've got double-digit views on our watch-along episode from a couple of weeks ago where we did the Chamber of Horrors match. There's going to be more like that coming in the future. Maybe a serious match or maybe a 5-star classic. We're not sure yet. Stay tuned for that. Please like, subscribe, and share on YouTube and Facebook and all that. Leave us that 5-star review because the drive for 500 subscribers does continue. I am chomping at the bit to give some woo chops to Patrick, who you will notice is not with us this week, but we will carry on in his stead. Big Mang, first of all, how are you doing this fine evening?
I'm doing good. I'm doing well. Can't complain. Could be worse, so hey, I'm good. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. School year's wrapping up. I can't believe the school year's wrapping up. It's this time of year I always, get kind of anxious. Like, am I going to get to everything I need to get to? Am I going to take care of everything I need to take care of? And somehow it always works. But was interested to hear about your topic for this week because, as I mentioned in the intro, it involves one of the few times where, in my opinion, the three major wrestling companies of the Attitude Era, we'll just call it that, kind of intersected and we're all doing business together either on purpose or unwittingly. Maybe I've got that right. We'll see here. But Isaac, I'm going to throw it over to you. I'd like you to set the scene for what we're talking about. Maybe give us a little backstory, some deets, if you will, and then we will break down over the course of the next several minutes here what actually happened and the ramifications of it, because I think that's where you want to sink your teeth into, is the ramifications of what actually happened.
Just the fact that what I'm going to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, this evening is something that was very, very unusual at the time. To just go into a little bit of a backstory, I'm referring to a match that had two wrestlers vying for a World Heavyweight Championship for a company that neither of them work for. What? Did I say that right? Yes, I did say that right. Now, I know you're sitting there saying to yourself, what? No, that's not right. But yes. Now, I want to give you guys a little bit of backstory. I'm going to give you the backstory of ECW. During that period of time, the current World Heavyweight Champion was Mike Awesome. And he was getting ready to go into a feud with the Mr. Monday Night, Mr. Pay-Per-View, Rob Van Dam. Now, leading up to this with Rob, who was still the television champion for over 300 days, right before this feud began, Rob broke his leg. Now, the interesting thing about this is Rob Van Dam probably should have broke his leg way earlier than this had ever happened if you ever saw the way Rob Van Dam wrestled. And you're sitting here saying, how did he not break his leg before then? I understand, because you see some of the stuff he does, it's like, oh my God, he's amazing. If you don't know, go back and watch a Jerry Lynn versus Rob Van Dam match. and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. Now, we'll move forward really quickly. Now, Rob Van Dam broke his leg, so he had to relinquish the television title. It also sent everything else into a tailspin for ECW because Mike Awesome was getting ready to face him. Now, at this time, we're going to leave ECW where it is. We're going to WCW. WCW was going through a rebuilding period at that point in time. They were going to rebrand themselves. They were going to start from scratch. They were going to strip every one of their titles. They were going to go specifically and shake some things up because they were losing the Monday Night Wars. They were losing to WWE / then WWF. Does not matter. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's all good. So what they decided to do was they were going to have, as I want to call it, they were going to have the up-and-coming young stars and some people they thought they should be highlighting a little bit more go up against the older gentlemen that were still there.
Is this New Blood Rising that you're talking about?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
They decided at that time that I want to say the O-Heads, the Stings, the Lex Lugers, the Kevin Nashes, the Scott Halls, Hulk Hogan's, all these guys were holding on to their positions. And they felt, you know what? We need to switch some things up. And we need to highlight these younger, up-and-coming young men. That's great. Fantastic. 2 thumbs up. But they were also going to add in a couple other extra flavors. Now, WWE at the time is just doing their own thing, doing whatever. They had just recently acquired Tazz from ECW. Now, you're sitting here saying to yourself, so what does this all have to do and where is it combined? Well, WCW decided that they wanted to reach out to Mike Awesome to see if he would actually go to WCW. Mike Awesome, who was being very upfront and very honest, went to Paul Heyman and said, hey, I got this offer from WCW. I know I'm currently your world heavyweight champion, but this opportunity is really good. Now, Paul Heyman at the time could have said, hell no, you ain't doing this. But he didn't. He knew it was a business decision. And so he said, okay, there are 2 things you can do, 2 things you cannot do if you decide to go to WCW. If you go the one night that they're revamping everything, everyone's in the back. I think Bret Hart was there, Goldberg was in the back, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall. I think Hogan was there, but he wasn't shown on television that night. They said, you can show up and take this contract, but you can't do 2 things. The one thing you can't do is you can't show up with the ECW belt because he didn't want to have another Alundra Blaze / Medusa incident where that title goes into the trash. The second thing he said was you cannot talk. You can't get on the mic and make a comment or degrade ECW or anything that we're doing. Basically, you had one job. So, proceeding into the night, Kevin Nash comes out. He says a few things. Mike Awesome shows up, and everyone freaks out. Oh my God, isn't that Mike Awesome? Isn't he the current champion of another promotion? And we're all sitting here like, Mike Awesome just showed up? Like, what the hell just happened? So he grabs a microphone, and as I said before, you had one job. Grabs a microphone and says, this opportunity was just too sweet. And okay. You idiot. Basically what you did was you violated one of the rules. So he goes back to Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman's like, I made it perfectly clear what you shouldn't have done. and you did it anyway. So basically, our contract is null and void. I can screw you to go to WCW if I want. But Paul said, no, I'm a businessman. Even though you messed up, this is what I'm going to have you do. You have to drop the title to whoever I say, whenever I say. And Mike Awesome was like, fine, no problem, don't care. But I'm not going to tell you who it's going to be. Just be prepared when I tell you that night you're dropping the belt. Obviously, because you can't go to WCW with the ECW World Heavyweight Championship. So Paul Heyman decides that he wants to call either Pat Patterson or Jared Briscoe and ask if he can borrow someone to take the title off of Mike Awesome. And it finds its way up to Vince, and Vince says, okay, sure. Doesn't matter to me. I'm okay with it. And they were going to have...
Was this around the time where Vince and Paul Heyman had what we'll call it a working arrangement?
They had a working arrangement, and of course, we know that Vince, at some point in time, was backing some of the things that were happening in ECW. It really wasn't known that well, but some people we look back at it now and say, okay, I see where it went. And remember, a lot of ECW talent went to the WWE. We can go through the names, and that would take us forever, because some of them are Hall of Famers. We can start with the Dudleys. We can start with Lita. We can start with, we can talk about our boy. Now, we can go on for a long time and start naming who was originally in ECW that went to WWE and did their damn thing. Not going to go there right now. But we're gonna branch that to the side, and so Paul decided that he was going to get one person to do it. Now, I'm going to do a sidetrack before I go into how this went down, and say house shows. If you decide that you don't want to go to a house show because it's not going to be nationally televised, and you might see yourself on TV, I say to you, go to house shows. Support whatever company it is, whether it be WWE, whether it be whether it be Impact, whether it be AEW. Go to their house shows. Something strange might happen. Someone might show back up. And I say that for the specific reason of Xavier Woods came back during a house show. One night in Texas, during a couple of years ago, when The Undertaker was taking his year time off between, when he was only doing one show a year, and it was WrestleMania, when they were in Texas, one night at a house show, The Undertaker shows up unannounced. They've dropped the Intercontinental title at house shows because people have been injured. But this particular house show was right after it happened. This was maybe 2 days after the incident at WCW. Mike Awesome's back in the ECW arena. And he's running down Paul Heyman saying this, that, and the third. And all this jazz about how he's getting ready to go to ECW. He's getting ready to go to WCW. Excuse me. And Paul comes out and says, no. I got somebody that can beat you. Now, mind you, this is in Philly. So we all know how Philly fans are. Let's just keep it real. They're some of the most passionate fans in wrestling, period, end of story. We can argue who's more passionate, but Philly fans back in the day.
Actually, Isaac, I'll correct you really quick. This didn't happen in Philadelphia.
It happened in Indianapolis, I believe.
Indianapolis, yes. But it was still, these are still rabid ECW fans. People are still coming correct, no matter what city they're in.
Exactly. Now, if we sit here and we think about it, Mike Awesome's running down them, running down the city, blah, 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 blah. Paul comes out and says, I got something that can beat you. And he's here right now. All of a sudden, Tazz's music hits. Not Tazz's music from ECW hits. The Tazz's music that he just started off with WWE hits. And you hear the and everyone looks at each other like, oh my God, it can't be. And it's Tazz. Holy crap. Tazz has showed up. Now, Tazz comes out, looks at him, and in Tazz fashion, whoops his ass in about 20 seconds. New ECW champion. Now, I'm sitting here before we even, I know that was quick, but we're sitting here talking about Mike Awesome, who was the current ECW champion. But at that moment, he was contractually a WCW wrestler, facing the former ECW champion, Tazz, who was a WWE wrestler for the ECW title, which they don't even have the company to work. They don't work for either company. What?
It's a really strange situation, and I suppose if you were gonna predict who it would happen to, I guess the smart money's on Paul Heyman.
Yeah.
I'll go broad brush on this first of all. I knew of this story, but as the show tonight drew closer and you said you were really keen on, wanting to talk about this, I kind of went back and found the clip on YouTube. And then it turns out that the boys across the pond at Cultaholic actually have a behind the match. Sam Driver has the behind the match series. And this is one of the matches they take a deep dive on. So I kind of got a little bit of the backstory. I personally have never thought much of Mike Awesome. I know that he's a specimen. I know that he has a skill set that people were very interested in. But again, in my mind, he's just one of these guys that I don't see why him at the expense of other people. Because here's my first question. Is this at the point where ECW is bleeding talent to the point where Paulie doesn't have anybody else believable, dependable, reliable enough to just run out there and get the pin in like 3 minutes or whatever, that he felt he had to go and get Tazz somehow?
ECW at that point in time was doing things that were very unconventional. And at that time, they were specifically doing something where you knew where after Tazz won the belt, he went back to WWE, and WWE allowed him to wear the ECW belt to the ring. And he actually had a match against Hunter Hearst Helmsley, obviously, champion versus champion. He lost. In the midst of that happening, Tommy Dreamer, who was the most reliable person that they had at the time, you're going to drop it to Tommy Dreamer at the next pay-per-view, which was in like 2 weeks. It's going to go to Tommy Dreamer. Oh, I mean, please, it's the writing's on the wall. We figured this out. Come on, it's too obvious. But what had happened was, that's it. Tommy Dreamer did face Tazz. And he beat Tazz. And Tommy Dreamer had never said, I never want to be the world champion. I never want to have a title. But he knew that it had to go to him because he was the most reliable person. Right after he beat Tazz, Justin Credible came in and beat the tar out of him, challenged him for the title, and Justin Credible beat him. Did you expect to see that happen? What? And that's the couple things that Paul was brilliant about. He did things that were super unconventional at the time. And especially when it comes to the Dudley Boys. The Dudley Boys on their last match were facing, I forget who it was, for the ECW Tag Team Champions. It's literally their last match. They're basically saying goodbye. Everyone knows it. It's all over everywhere. Here they are, getting ready to bow out gracefully, and they win the ECW Tag Team belts. Their last day. What the hell? All of a sudden, Tommy Dreamer comes out to try and beat him down. They start beating the snot out of him. All of a sudden, Raven decides that he came back from WCW and won the World Tag Team belts with Tommy Dreamer. Huh? Like I said, ECW is known for doing swerves and curveballs and thinking, what the hell just happened? But this was the biggest one of all at the time. How is it that three companies that couldn't stand each other at some point in time decided to pull this off? And this was history. This was different. This was like, huh? But yes, it did happen. And it's just different. It's just weird. It's different. It's something that I thought about, and I'm like, this is crazy.
I think for me, it underscores why. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why ECW didn't last. You know, like it wasn't really around for that much, for that long a period of time. It's just because, and I think the main reason because of the way Paul Heyman did business at the time was not sustainable. You know, he was, you know, it's in the canon now how much he was, you know, robbing Peter to pay Paul and stuff like that to, you know, secure the funding, you know, the insurance for the building and the merchandise sales and this and that and trying to get a television deal and all this stuff. And the fact of the brand of wrestling he was promoting is not everybody's cup of tea. I mean, I've said on numerous occasions on this show, you know, Patrick and RJ and you have gotten me to watch a lot more ECW than I ever did before. And I still, you know, don't quite subscribe to it because it's just not my cup of tea. And I'm on record as saying that. You know, every match having extreme rules and every match involving foreign objects and every match somebody's bleeding and every match, you know, the crowd is giving people frying pans and cookie sheets and stuff like that. I think the bottom line is this style of promotion is not sustainable.
I want to just, you are 150% correct on everything that you just said. Let me just make sure I just put that out there first. I also want to sit here and say the biggest promoter for that company was Paul Heyman. And the biggest downfall for that promotion was also Paul Heyman. We also sit here and forget that they were doing things such as that match, but they were also doing matches with Chris Benoit versus Eddie Guerrero, Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio. You know, you sit back and you're like, oh my God, we're not just getting the beat down matches or the, you know, frying pan.
I don't mean to say that's all they did, but
yes, that's the majority of what they did. But you got a plethora of just different styles. And we have to sit here and applaud that because we look back and we say, you know what? We look at Rey Mysterio. We look at Eddie Guerrero. We look at Chris Benoit. We look at, you know, Rob Van Dam, Jerry Lynn. We look at these guys that were amazingly technically sound. Lance Storm, guys like that were just amazing technical wrestlers. But then you had the other extremes guys. The guys like the Sabus, the guys like the Dudleys. But you got matches that were 5-star matches. And you're sitting like, oh my God, this is amazing. You know? But for the most part, we look over the whole spectrum and say, you know what, this is hot mess. This is a hot mess. We also forget Stone Cold Steve Austin was down there.
Yeah.
We sit here and we can go through the archives and start saying that all these people came from ECW at some point in time. Cactus Jack. Oh my God. Terry Funk. But we can sit here and go through the myths. But I'm saying what I'm trying to say for this particular match was so unprecedented at the time, and for them to even all agree to even think about doing this is huge. And ECW was going on the downfall. WCW was going on the downfall. And it's unfortunate, but we look to the future, and WWE takes them both and takes their best talent. And we get some amazing things and some amazing people that came out of it. Some people got dusted in the wind, but
Here's an interesting question for you to
Sure.
kind of put a bow on all of it. Let's say for a minute that Mike Awesome did in fact honor the terms of being able to show up on WCW programming. What do you think happens then? Let's say that, okay, he just shows up, signs the contract, and leaves, and doesn't say anything, doesn't bring the championship with him. How long do you think Paul waits to take the belt off of him, number one? And do you still think it goes down the way it goes down, or is it a bit less convoluted where he goes to like somebody like Tommy Dreamer, for example, and says, okay, you're an original, Mike Awesome is leaving, you're going to be the one to take it off of him?
If inevitably Mike Awesome was going to drop that belt in a week's time anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Who was going to go to? That's the story. They didn't have anybody else legitimately that you could sit there and say, okay, this guy's the guy that's going to do it. And everyone just looked, Tommy's got to be the guy. Tommy was so resistant in doing it. He didn't want to be the guy. Tommy had made it clear, I don't want to do it. I don't want to be the guy, but I know I've got to do it. Yeah. So for the betterment of the company, being the company guy that he was, he said, okay, I'll go ahead and do it. I think that was the original plan, but the little extra special sauce that happened because Mike Awesome messed up made it even sweeter as a wrestling fan. But it's unfortunate that we can't sit back and ask Mike Awesome now if he would have done it again. What would have happened if Rob Van Dam was healthy?
That's another important point. That's kind of what set it all into motion.
That's a very big, weird question to say. What would have happened if so-and-so were still here? What if Rob Van Dam hadn't broken his leg? We sit back and we wonder and say, how crazy what would have happened? What would have been the next step? Where would they have gone? Would Rob Van Dam eventually have become the world heavyweight champion? In my mind, yes.
I mean, as white hot as he was at that point, and as much as the ECW fans were getting into him, I think it was only a matter of time.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
Rob Van Dam, even though he got stiffed a lot by Paul, he was still loyal to him. You know, he was like Paul was the mad scientist who everyone followed. You know, you stood there and said, "I'll follow this guy to the end of the world, and I'll jump off that cliff. I won't, I just won't, walk. I will jump, leap, backflip, do everything because I believe in Paul." It was eventual. It was going to be that Rob was going to be the champion. We all knew it. I mean, the guy he made that title more prestigious than the world title.
Yeah.
And it was only a matter of time. But Rob got hurt. Mike Awesome at the time was doing a great job. I'm not going to put him down in any way, shape, or form. I think he was a phenomenal performer. And he was doing some things that some big man shouldn't be able to do. I'll leave it at that. But again, what if? The ramifications are that yes, you run into wrestling with a lot of people, and you come in contact with a lot of people that are in different companies that you're still friends with. You look at very similar to what's happening with Adam Cole and Bobby Fish and everybody over at All Elite, and the fourth member still in WWE, and everyone's like, well, time is over. And we're sitting here saying to ourselves, people that are in different companies, and they're saying, hey, this is what's going on here. I'm liking it. I like the atmosphere. We're doing something a little different. I think a lot of people, and I'm not saying this, to down WWE, but they're limiting them with that money that they could have when they could be doing, an OnlyFans, or they could be doing, a separate podcast and getting some extra money in their pocket, and we only want you to do this. They're not hurting anybody else. They're just trying to get a little bit of extra money to feed their families, and that's what it is. And you're limiting them, and I think it's kind of wrong. That's my own personal opinion. Everyone can get mad at me. It doesn't really matter. It's all good. But
we do appreciate Isaac, you bringing this moment in time in wrestling history to our attention. It is fascinating because, in a way, you can make the argument that it paves the way for what AEW is doing on purpose. They have open relationships with other wrestling companies, working a relationship with Impact. The people from Impact that are showing up. You had Morrissey showing up the other night to wrestle Wardlow. Deonna Purrazzo making an appearance on AEW television, and the relationship with New Japan and things like that. I think we're in an era now where these other companies realize this is a way that we can actually compete with WWE. We can make some noise over here and bring some eyes from over there to over here, because while there are good things going on in WWE, you got to hunt really hard to find them, unfortunately. And
yeah.
So, and and that's what I've seen a lot with these other companies right now, is this is one way that you can get eyes from over there to over here and say, wow, I mean, you're going to have AEW talent versus New Japan talent. I want to see that. I want to see Tanahashi versus Christian, for example, or I want to see Okada versus Adam Cole. I mean, that is a marquee match, So I will give a quick correction. I made a mistake last week in saying that the Broken Skull sessions with Cody Rhodes was going to air last weekend. It's actually airing this weekend. It's not up yet. So we're still eagerly anticipating that. I believe it's available Sunday night, which is Mother's Day. So that should be a fascinating watch. Isaac, anything else you would like to expound upon before we get on up out of here?
I don't really have anything else I really want to discuss. I know that we have a pay-per-view coming this weekend with Backlash, but there's nothing, and there have been a couple releases lately, but there's nothing really super major that's making me think we need to really touch base on it. If there's something you'd like us to discuss or think that's something that we need to touch base on, please, you know how to get in touch with us. Please write, text, email.
Leave a comment in the description. Leave a comment down there in the comment section. Isaac can be hit up on Twitter at I4th. I can be reached on Twitter at bkrego15, and you can tweet the show at WrestlingXEgos on Twitter. So for everyone associated with the show, for Isaac, for myself, for Patrick and RJ who are not with us this week, shout out to all the moms out there. Thank you for everything you do and for the rocks that you are in our lives. We appreciate you. Thank you for making us a small part of your wrestling week. For Isaac, I'm Brian, the intellectual savior of the wrestling masses. Thank you for your support. And this right here is why we love professional wrestling. See you next time.
Later, y'all.